All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar. Teri Czinn for dedicating all of Shir Drushos this month in honor of their newest grandson, Matan Shmuel Aharon. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, he grows to be an incredible Ben Torah Meva Esrim Shanim Tovos. And we thank our Day of Learning sponsors, Hilary Jacobson-Kent, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of her daughter, Shifra Chana Dena. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. Well, so with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Memtes 49. Shahyanu, Vikimanu, Vigiyanu, Lazman Hazeh. What an incredible schus we have in Meretz Hashem to close out and to finish up this magnificent, overwhelming, and incredible Masechta. So again, today's page 49, Daf Memtes. Memtes. We are picking up on Memtes on the days 48b, and we left off Tan Rabbanon, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 14 lines off from the bottom. So let's remember again, we left off in the middle of or towards the end of a discussion regarding the Shamir. Not the Prime Minister, but rather, again, the interesting, okay, that went good. Too early, I guess, right? So, thank you. And ultimately, again, so this unique type of worm, or type of creature that was used to cut through hard surfaces. Machlok is exactly what the Shamir was used for. Was it used for the stones of the Beis HaMikdash? Was it used for the stones, ultimately, again, of the monarchical palace? Was it used for the stones of the Choshen? Was it used for all of the above? Okay, so we saw various discussions. Tan Rabbanan, Shamir, Zebria, so TORAH. So we'll say the Shamir, when it's created, it's as small as a barley corn, small as a kernel of barley. It was made in the beginning of creation. And I will say there is no hard surface, right, that it can't penetrate. It can't penetrate. So just some details about the Shamir. Also, we'll say ultimately again, how do you guard it? In other words, how do you safeguard it? So you wrap it in tufts of wool. Also, you put it inside of a tube of lead or a lead tube, filled with barley bran. Okay, so that's how you go ahead. Good to know in case you purchase a Shamir, that is how you go ahead and you care for it. I will say, I will tell you something absolutely amazing. If you think about that Gemara, the Shamir is the size of a barley corn, right? And yet I will say, what does the Gemara say? There is no hard surface that it can't penetrate. So I will say, the ability to get through the barriers of life and the ability to go ahead and get through the walls of life is not dependent on your physical stature or your physical might, but rather it is fully dependent on your spiritual stamina. The smallest of creatures, if given the power by the Ribono Shel Olam, can penetrate the hardest of surfaces. If the Shamir could get through, look at that lashon. Ein kol davar kasha yachol lamo b'fanav. There is no obstacle. There is nothing hard that could stand in front of the Shamir. If a creature the size of a barley kernel that doesn't have a neshama, like me and you, could penetrate even the hardest surface, then I will say there is no telling what we can accomplish. Incredible. So the Gemara goes right to Rabbi Ami. B'shchar Beis HaMikdash Rishon, Batla Shira Paranda Uzuchuches Lavana. When the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, so this fine silk and white glass no longer existed. I will say this goes in line with the thing that we've been speaking about, that with the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, ultimately again, there was like a decrease in the level of lifestyle. Right? Even just like materially, the world was impacted. So this fine silk, this white glass, this fine crystal ceased to exist. When the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Batla Shira Pranda, so this fine silk stopped to exist. V'zechuches Levana, and this fine crystal, Berechev Barzal, and iron chariots. That's an interesting one. Right, the somehow iron chariots also where there was a shortage after the first Beis HaMikdash. So this is interesting. So they had a delicacy that came from the city of Snir, which was congealed wine. So they used to have this type of congealed wine that looked like a cake of pressed figs. So I guess, again, it was considered to be a type of delicacy. I also remember, again, they were always drinking wine from concentrate. So I guess you have a congealed wine, so that's a delicacy, ultimately, again, because you take a little bit of that, you go ahead and dilute it, and then you have your glass of wine. So the idea over here is that with destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the material bounty of the world was diminished as well. The Nofes Tzufim, so also remember again, the Mishnah talks about the fact that the Nofes Tzufim stopped. My Nofes Tzufim, what is that? Amrav Solas Shetzafa Gabe Nafa. It's the type of fine flour that floats on top of the sieve, meaning that it doesn't go through the sieve because of its thickness. V'domah Isa Shnilusha B'dvash Ushemen. And it's like a dough that has been kneaded with oil and with honey. So we'll say, so again, the same thing. Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. This type of delicacy ceased to exist. Levi says, no, Nofes Sufim. I will say, refers to the fact that there used to be like a type that, again, I will say, the theme that's being expressed over here is when there was a Beis HaMikdash. A Beis HaMikdash, we like to think about a Beis HaMikdash as a beautiful structure where we go to daven, we go to engage in spiritual service, and the absence of it impacts our spirituality. That statement, of course, is true. What Gemara is trying to highlight is the absence of the Beis HaMikdash impacted the world's material bounty as well. Without a Beis HaMikdash, there's a disruption in universal equilibrium. And with that disruption, everything is impacted. So the material is impacted, the spiritual is impacted, nothing is as it should be. So the Gemara says, so Levi says, what's this Nofes Sufim? It used to be that bakers would put two doughs, right? Well, see, they used to often also bake bread by sticking dough against the wall of the oven. So what would end up happening is you would put two doughs, and the doughs would expand. You put them at different places in the oven. They would expand. They would meet each other. So that was a sign also of material bounty. That stopped when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So ultimately, again, or tzipim, Rashi says over here, he changes it. Sofim, sorry. So this is honey that comes from the mountains. My mashma, the Matagan of Sheshes, Kima dinassan debriusa v'shaitin baromi alma. So we'll say again a reference over here to bringing mountains, to bringing honey from the mountains. Tinan Hassam, we learned over there. Kalanitzok tar. We actually saw this halacha not so long ago. In general, if you pour from a tahar kli to a tamei kli, you pour, let's say, the contents of a tahar kli to a tamei kli, there is a nitzok, there is a flow. That flow does not connect the kelim for tumah purposes. In other words, even though you're pouring from a tahar kli into a tamei kli, ultimately, again, the connection between the tamei and the tahar doesn't make the contents of the tahar kli tamei, except chutz midvash tzifim bat sefichim, except for honey from zifim and sefichim, because apparently Rashi points out that's so thick that it links the contents. My zifim, what zifim? On Rabbi Yochanan, Devash Shemezayfin Bo. It's the type of honey that's so rich that even if you dilute it, it doesn't change the taste. Reish Lakish says, Hashem Akamo, it's called this name because of where it comes from. Kedech Siv, Zif, V'telim Ubalos. Kyotzi B'davrat Omer, Bevoa Zifim, V'yomer L'shal Halo David Mistatri Amar. So we'll say, so again, you see that this notion of Zif could either be a descriptive name or Zif could be a geographic name. Okay, my Zifim, we'll say with these people, I will say this is actually talking about over here, these people from Zif were people who tried to turn in David HaMelech to Shaul. So my Zifim, why are they called Zifim? I'm Rabbi Yochanan, B'nei Adam HaMezayfin Divrehim. These are people ultimately who go ahead and, we'll say, Zayfin literally means to forge, but it means that they're dishonest with their words. Rabbi Elazar Omer Hashem Koman, it's also because they're from the city of Zif. Kedech Siv, Zif, V'talem Ubalos. Good. So we'll say weiter. With the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, 4 lines up from the bottom, and Chesem Lebeis 48b. With the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, Pasku Anshe Amana, men of truth stopped to exist. Amar Yitzchak, Elu b'nei Adam shein ma'aminim ma'akadosh Baruch Hu. We'll say this is incredible. What does it mean people of Emunah stopped to exist? The Gemara says it means exactly what it says. People stopped having emunah. I will say, it's interesting because we're coming to a close now also in Shara B'tachon. Right? So hopefully, again, you're following along still in Shara B'tachon. And I will say, it's so interesting that one of the most eye-opening parts of learning the Sefer, and I do want to distinguish that Emunah and Bitachon are really different things. We kind of use them synonymously. But the point over here is that to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to have a sense of trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a very nuanced process. And really requires a certain giving over of control, which, if we're honest, most of us are not really willing to do. Right? I'm willing to do mitzvahs, I'm willing to observe, I'm willing to regulate behaviors. Giving over control, even to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is something that is very difficult for many of us. So the Gemara says, when there was a Beis HaMikdash, there was a sense of emunah which permeated the world. When the Beis HaMikdash was gone, it was hard to find people who possessed true emunah. It's such an incredible statement. So the Gemara goes right there. Here it is. Anyone who has bread in his basket, and worries about what he's going to eat tomorrow, ultimately, again, lacks faith. It'll say, we literally just did this in Shara Bitachon. If you're following along, we literally just spoke about this, not in yesterday. What's today? What's today, Friday? Wednesday. Okay, good. So the mice, again, it must have been in Monday's shir. We literally just spoke about this idea of how people have this mindset of like, I'm going to focus on my spirituality as soon as I take care of all of my material needs. And what is all my material needs? Once I am financially set for the rest of my life, then I'm going to go ahead and devote myself to spirituality. Then really I'm going to up my game. But until I take care of all of my financial needs, I don't have the bandwidth to focus. Meanwhile, the Shai B'tachon says, I don't understand. You're presupposing you know what your future holds. First of all, you're presupposing how much money you know you're going to need. You're presupposing you're going to live for a certain amount of time. Those are a lot of presuppositions that you cannot know for sure are going to occur. So therefore, it's amazing. The Shai B'tachon writes, says, if you have enough to live on today, you're good. You're good. Because you don't know anything beyond today. So if you have what you need today, get working on your ruchnius. Because Cheshbon Baruch Hu is giving you what you need in order to exist for today. Keep going. So he's saying that's the definition of Emunah as well. Emunah means bas basalo. There's bread in the basket. There is bread in the basket. If there's bread in the basket, okay. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Chavra, no one knows what tomorrow is going to bring. We never know on every single level what tomorrow is going to bring. So if you have bread in the basket today, then get moving on the ruchnius. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, there were people who understood that. When the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Pasku Anshe Amana. I was saying incredible. So the Gemara goes right to Kimi Bazlion Katnos Migaron Sadikim. She's Bazbazu Shulchan La Asad Lavo. Katnos Shahayu Ban Shalamin Bakadosh Baruch Hu. Says incredible. What caused the tzaddikim to have a diminished table in the world to come? Ultimately, again, it's the fact that they lacked emunah in this world. And as I will say, it's an incredible thing to think about. That what it means to have emunah, is, emunah means the ability to move forward in living a spiritually productive life, even if you don't have all the answers regarding your material wealth. See, also, we're not conditioned to think this way. We are conditioned to think, and again, it doesn't come from a bad place. I need to have all of my material stuff figured out before I could fully go ahead and devote myself to spirituality. And I will say, if that's what I'm waiting for, most of us never have all of our material stuff figured out. So Lamaisa, what Emunah means is, as long as you've got bread in the basket, you're good. You're good. Then Lamaisa, put your faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's going to take care of the rest, and you do what you need to do, i.e. your ruchnius, i.e. your spirituality. People didn't have that in the absolute Beis HaMikdash. Rava Amar, Eluk Tani B'nei Rasha. Shabbos says into this. This refers ultimately again to the children of Rishayim. Top of Memtes, Shemavaz Vizin Din Avim La'asad Lavo. Shabbos says, listen to this. Who help to go ahead and take care of the judgment of their parents in the world to come. So I said, this is incredible. What does this mean? Listen to this profound Gemara. So the Gemara is talking about over here Rishayim whose children die. So I will say, obviously the loss of a child is an overwhelming and immeasurable loss. So I will say, so the children of Risha'im advocate for their wicked parents in the world to come. How so? The children say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Me'achar sha'atem asid li para mehen, la me'kise shneim bam. The children say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, once you're going to extract punishment from our parents in the world to come, why did you punish them in this world as well with the loss of a child? So I'll say, isn't that incredible? So I'll say, so again, so much to say over here. Let's go weiter. Some Rabbi Lazar, Amra Rabbi Loi Bari Barachia, Ilmalei Tfilaso Shal David, Hayu Kol Yisrael Mochrei Revav. Both say, were it not for the tfilos of David HaMelech on behalf of Klal Yisrael would be, Rabbi say, Mochrei Revav. Mochrei Revav means grease salesman. Rabbi say, selling grease, selling schmaltz, right, is an honest business. What's the problem? The problem is all of your clothing is stained, right? Because lemaisa, it's schmaltz, it's grease. So I say, so it was considered to be a degrading profession. You can make what you need, but it's degrading. So the Gemara says over here, were it not for the tfilos of David HaMelech, Klal Yisrael would go out and be grease salesmen. Shnei Amar, Shisa Hashem Mora Lahem. So I'll say, so ultimately, again, absolutely an incredible idea. But I just want to point out, it's also a lesson. It's also a lesson in Koach HaTfilah. Sometimes we daven for certain things, and we don't get what we want. It happens. So sometimes, maybe it happens often. We don't get what we want. And we often look at those tfilos as tfilos which failed. So I will say, there's no such thing as a tfilah that fails. There's no such thing as a tfilah that doesn't affect change. Right? But Lamaisa, tfilos often are directed in different ways. David HaMelech never explicitly davened for this. But Lamaisa, again, David HaMelech uttered many, many tfilos on behalf of Klal Yisrael. And what the Gemara is saying over here is David HaMelech's tfilos on behalf of the Klal, maybe they didn't always get him exactly what it is that he wanted, but they had a general positive effect on the Klal, they uplifted the Klal. Such an incredible way for us to look at tefillah. Were it not for the tefillah of Chabakuk, ultimately, again, hayu beis tamidei chachamim miskasim v'talis achos. So we'll say then two Torah scholars would cover themselves with one blanket, va'oskim b'Torah, and would learn in that way. In other words, were it not for the tefillah of Chabakuk, so tamidei chachamim would learn Torah in abject poverty. Shnei Amar, Hashem shamati shemacha yarisi Hashem palacha bekerev shnayim chayehu. Al tikra bekerev shnayim ela bekiruv shnayim. Okay, a little bit of a play on words. So Chabakuk's tefillah helped in that Talmidei Chachamim, when they learn, don't have to learn in abject poverty. Both say this is incredible. Two Talmidei Chachamim who are walking on the road, right, and do not learn Torah together, ru'uyin lisaref be'esh, right, are worthy of being burnt in fire. Shnei Amar, vayhema holchim haloch v'daber v'hinei rechav eish. Taima de'ika dibor. The reason was there was speech. Haleka dibor, where they're not speech, and there was speech of Torah. Ru'uyin lisaref. Ultimately, again, they're fit to be burned. So we'll say Rashi says over here, Ru'uyin lisaref, shamanas kein baharechav eish aleim. Fine. So we'll say, so first I'll take a look. The pasuk over here is talking about by Elisha, when ultimately, again, Elisha and Eliyahu are going ahead and walking together. This is when Eliyahu is taken up to Shemaim in a fiery chariot. So the Gemara says, the reason why they weren't burned was because they were talking Torah. So we'll say, also, like, an incredibly profound Gemara. A profound Gemara on two levels, I will say, which is, if you think about it, this is Shnei Talmidei Chacham Halchin B'derech. Right? They're walking on the road. They're not on the base medrash. So, in other words, it's not saying over here, two Talmidei Chacham are sitting in the base medrash. They're supposed to be learning, right? This we could relate to this scene. I'm sitting in the base medrash. I'm supposed to be learning, but I said I'm not learning. I said, what am I doing? I'm schmoozing. So I can understand what the Gemara was saying over here, that if that happens, again, ru'uyin lisarif beish, they should be burnt by fire, because here they're sitting in the base medrash and they're wasting their time. We'll say, what's the scene over here? Mahalchan baderech. They're walking on the road. We'll say, what do you see over here? What does it take to be a Talmud Chacham? What does it take to be a Talmud Chacham? It's not the simple ingestion of knowledge. What it takes to be a Talmud Chacham is to be a person who is always living a purposeful life. When you're walking on the road, what are you doing? I say, and this is such an incredible yisod, because so often in life, when we are not engaged in a formal activity, we're often not utilizing our time in a maximum capacity. It doesn't mean I have to be learning all of the time. Now, because there's a time to relax, and there's definitely a time to shuz, and a time for all of those things. But once again, is my time and is my life used in a directed way? That's the shayla. I was supposed to say, we spoke on this, I don't remember the other context, I saw this last week, but like, if you were to look at your day and plug in what you did at every part of the day, would it be a day well used? Is it time well used? Am I optimizing the moments of life? You know, I will say, doesn't mean that I don't waste any time. No, of course, all of us inevitably waste time. Not that I set out to do so, but it just happens. But the shayla is bigadol in a general sense. Is my time maximized? That's what it's saying over here. Shnei talmidei chachamim hamahalchen b'derech. Talmud chacham, what are you doing when you walk with your friend? What are you doing? You're shooting the breeze. You're making small talk. Right? What are you doing? And what it means to be a Talmud Chacham is someone who optimizes every single moment. And if you don't, then what are you doing? And what are you doing with your life? If you're just willing to let those small moments squander. We're willing to squander the small moments. Okay, let's go back there. Sigmar goes back there. We don't have time. It's just too good. It's too good. Yeah, okay, I just want to point out, I'm not doing it justice. Shavuos is coming, right? It's such a golden opportunity to just review these Gemaras, even if you don't delve into deeper pshat. I will say, even just pashat pshat, just reading these Gemaras is just overwhelming. So the Gemara goes like the two Talmidei Chacham who live in the same city. They know we'll say this is stark. I will say, literally again, they are not pleasant to one another in halacha. Now, I will say, nochin could mean a number of different things. Nochin means that they don't converse with each other. Nochin could mean they don't acknowledge each other's opinion. They don't try to learn from one another, or they're not deferential to one another. Then what's the halacha? Echad meis ve'echad gola. One of them dies, and one of them is sent to galus. Now, I will say, Rashi points out over here that what ends up happening is one of them kills the other one accidentally. That ends up happening. So therefore, again, one is dead, and now, of course, remember again, the sentence for accidental murder is galus. Shneimar lonos sham rotzeach asher yitzach Israel bivli das. Vein das el Torah shneimar nitmu ami mibli adas. Rabbi say, by the way, what's the pshat with that? Because when you have two Talmidei Chacham in a city, Rabbi say the general population looks at how those people interact with each other. They look, how do Talmidei Chacham, how do the ambassadors of Torah interact with each other? And if those individuals do not display proper derech eretz and do not display proper kavod for one another, it erodes the kavod HaTorah in the eyes of the general population. And that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, so if Rabbanim, if Talmidei Chachamim, if leaders in a community, they can't interact pleasantly with one another, then ultimately, again, you're not fit for leadership. You're not fit because you're not setting the right example for the general population. Again, incredible. Any Talmud Chacham who learns Torah, we'll say mitoch adchak means from adversity. Really, it usually means from poverty, right? From difficulty. Tefillah son nishmas. His tefillah is heard. Shneimar ki am b'tzion yeshev Yerushalayim b'chol lo sivkeh chanyin yachnecha l'kol zarecha ki shamato anchal. Ksibas. It says afterwards, v'nasan Hashem lachem tsar umayim lachatz. So I will say, so isn't this incredible? Any Talmid Chacham who learns Torah from adversity, his tefillos are heard. I will say, what's the pshat? It's very simple. I will say, anyone could do the right thing. Anyone could learn Torah and follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you have everything you need materially. I will say, we know this. What tests our resolve in life is when one is struggling financially. If I am struggling financially, do I keep up my commitment, my connection, and my resolve? And often the answer is no. And I will say, it's not an indictment of those of us who can't, because it's hard. It's really hard, it's really difficult. But Lamaisa Talmud Chacham, who's able to keep it up, who's able to keep it going, even mitoch adchak, such a person establishes a special bond with the Ribono Shel Olam. And the specialness, the uniqueness of that bond is manifest in the fact that his tefillos are answered. Incredible. The Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yavo Omer, masbiyan osam iziv shchina. Such a person ultimately, again, who's able to keep up his connection to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, even from the midst of adversity, ultimately is sustained from the divine presence itself. Shne'emar, vayonecha ros esmorecha. Rabbi Acha Rachanina Omer, af ina pargot nin al befanav. We'll say, such a person, even the curtain does not go ahead and stand for it. We'll say, there's this expression that the Ribono Shel Olam, the Shechina resides me'achori hapargod, from behind the curtain. So the curtain usually represents this idea that there's only so close that a person is going to be able to get to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a certain distance. A Talmud Chacham who devotes himself to Torah even in the midst of adversity, will say nothing stands in his way to creating a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when you're able to keep up your spiritual connection, even in the midst of adversity, your tefillos have a special power. You are sustained from the Shechina itself, and you are zocheh to have a unique, close, and intimate relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam. I will say, reminiscent of the Shamir. The same, right? Nothing stands in the way of the Shamir, nothing stands in the way of the Talmud Chacham, who keeps going even in the midst of adversity. Incredible. So it goes weiter. The say, since the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, every day brings with it greater adversity than the one before it. Each day gets increasingly harder. So the Gemara says, Mishal Shneimar, Baboker Tomar Miyitin Erev, Uba-Erev Yomar Miyitin Boker. So we'll say this is the Tochacha. In the morning you'll say, who will give me evening? And in the evening you'll say, who will give me morning? To which the Gemara says, we'll say, focusing on that last phrase. Hi Boker. So we'll say, when we say in the evening you'll say, when will the morning come? Which morning are we talking about? If you say it's tomorrow's morning, mi yada my hobby. How do you know about say that tomorrow's morning is going to be any better than today? Ella de chalif. We'll say this is profound. Rather, what it means is ba'erev yomar miyitain boker. In the evening of suffering, you'll say what? If only I could go back to yesterday's morning. So we'll say, you know how this works in life. That sometimes when you're going through a rough period, and you're at a difficult moment, you think back to previous times of adversity, and you say to yourself, that was nothing, right? That was absolutely nothing. So that's part of the Tochacha. Part of the Tochacha is ba'erev yomar miyitin li boker. In the evening, right? Nighttime in general represents difficulty, adversity. Like in the height of suffering, you'll say, oh, if only I could go back to the morning. If only I could go back to what was. But I will say, if you think about it, it's an incredible yesod, which is when we encounter adversity, there should be a part of us that's happy. Why? I know this sounds strange. Why? Because I will say, if you could weather adversity, just know what that will do is give you the strength to do other things in life. Because if you're able to weather difficult moments, when you encounter something smaller, what will you say to yourself? What do you say? I got this. I lived through that. I took care of that. So when we face big challenges in life, again, the little bit of nechama we should have is, okay, if I could just get through this, it tells me I can get through anything that's smaller than this, less intense than this later on. And that's a chizik. The Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, so I'll say, so listen to this. The Gemara says, well, if that's the case, let's get ready for this. If that's the case, that since the Beis Hamikdash has been destroyed, every day gets increasingly more difficult, then how is the world sustained? Right? In other words, I will say, like, it keeps getting more and more difficult, so how is the world sustained? Get ready for this. Akedusha de sidra v'yeheshmei rabba da'agarata. I will say, how is the world sustained? By Kedusha de sidra. I will say, what's Kedusha de sidra? Uvalatzion. Right? Where again we answer Kadosh. That's Uvalatzion. And Yeheshmei Rabba. Okay, that's Shneimar. Eretz Avsek Ma'ofel Tzamos Los Darim Hayesh Darim Tafiyah Me'ofel. So we'll say, what's the pshat? Take a look at Rashi. Akedusha de Sidra. Seder Kedusha Shal Tiknua Ela Shiu Kol Yisrael Oskin Batorah Bechol Yom Davar Muat. We'll say, ultimately, if you look at Uvalatzion is a compilation of psukim from Tanakh. Why did Chazal institute Uvalatzion? This way, every single Jew is learning Torah every day. All of Klal Yisrael is learning the same Torah every single day. Shomer kriyasa v'targumo v'hein ka'oskin b'Torah v'cheven shenoi b'chol Yisra b'tamidum ami haaretz v'yesh kan shtayim kedushas. Rabbi say everyone is learning the same Torah. Talmud Chacham learning the same Torah. Ami haaretz learning the same Torah. Everyone's learning the same Torah every single day. He goes on. He says v'Talmud Torah chaviv. Talmud Torah is very important. V'chein yesh me'rabba mevarach she'onin achar agada shadar shendarish b'rabim b'chol Shabbos hayunagis v'osei. So again, what's happening over here? It's incredible. We'll say, so what sustains the world? What sustains the world? Talmud Torah Derabim and Amen Yehesh Me'Rabba. We'll say, so what is the common denominator between these things? Everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's doing the same thing. Right? We're all in Uvalat Zion, we're all learning the same Torah. In Amen Yehesh Me'Rabba, we're all answering the same words. See, Rabbi say, do you know what sustains the world in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash? Do you know what sustains the world? Klal Yisrael's achdus and ruchnius. When we are all doing the same thing together, that's what sustains the world. Rabbi say. So listen to this. Says the Lubliner of Zeichet Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livrach Rameir Shapira. What do you see from here? The power of Daf Yomi. Because what is Daf Yomi? We're all learning the same Gemara every single day. I mean, we're behind most shiurim, but again, the rest of the world, right? Again, I'll say we're all learning the same Gemara every single day. There's a power to Klal Yisrael, not learning Torah, of course, is beautiful. Torah sustains the world. But what you see from this Gemara is what? There's a power when we do the same spiritual lift. There's a power when we're doing the same thing together. We're learning the same psukim in Uvalat Zion. We're answering the same Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. And we're learning the same Blat Gemara every single day. I will say, do you realize what's happening today? Do you realize that today Klal Yisrael is being Messiah Masechah Sotah? I will say, do you know what that means? Dude, it's not just us. It's not just a couple of guys. It's not just the Shir. It's not just the this. Klal Yisrael, hundreds of thousands of Jews. We are part of a chevra that's doing this. Hundreds of thousands of Jews are finishing Masechah Sotah today. On the 41st day of the Omer, a period of time in which, again, the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva died. Ashelo nagu kavod zeh lazeh. Whatever it means they couldn't be biyachad. They couldn't get it together to coexist. And what are we doing on this 41st day of the Omer? We are finishing Masechas Sotah together. Ein achdus kidol mizo. This is our Uvalat Zion. This is our Amen Yehesh Shmei Rabbah. And this is how we sustain our world until we get our Beis HaMikdash back. Incredible. Ultimately, again, there was no dew that fell, right? And ultimately, again, the flavor was taken away from fruit. So we'll say, once again, further examples of how the world materially and physically was impacted by the destruction of Beis HaMikdash. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Tara Batla Tamreach. When there is no more purity in the world, the sense of scent is taken away. Incredible. Meiser, Bitel Shuman Dagan. When people aren't careful with Meisrus, ultimately, again, the fat of the wheat is taken away. Rav Huna, get ready for this story. It's incredible. Rav Huna Ashkach to Marta Dechinu Nisa. Rav Huna found, we'll say, a fat date, right? Mamish like a zaftig date, right? Like a date, not like a little Tu B'Shvat date you get in your paper bag, right? I was going to say, like this was like that's a gullus date, right? This was a fat date that he found, right? An oozing date. And what happened? Shakla, he took it, karcha b'sudrei, and he wrapped it up in a cloth. As Rabba Berei, so let's get ready for this story. His son Rabba came. Amarlei morchina reicha dechinunisa. I smell a delicious date. So the father says, so ultimately again Rav Huna says, Amarli b'ni tara yesh b'cha. My son, the fact that you have the sense of scent, that you smell, that means you have tara, you have holiness, purity. So what happens? Yav and Ahele. So ultimately again, so we'll say, so Rav Huna gives it to his son Rabba. Adahachi asa Abba Brei. So we'll say, then Abba, the son of Rabba, right? So remember again, you have Rav Huna the father. Rav Huna gives it to his son Rabba, right? Rabba's son Abba comes along, and what happened? Shakla Yavanahila, and Rabba gave the date to his son Abba. Amrle, so we'll say Rav Huna the grandfather says, Bini, samachtas libi vekisa shinai. My son, you have made my heart glad but you've punched me in the teeth a little bit, right? In other words, literally, you've punched me. So he says, Hainu Dami, what was Rav Huna upset? Rav Huna he was so proud of his son Rabba, because Rabba ultimately, again, had the sense of scent, which means he had Tara. But why was he a little bit offended? I gave you a gift, and then you gave it to your son. We'll say, get ready for this. Hanu da armi inshi. This is what people say. Rachami da abba abani. Right? The compassion of a father is on his son. Rachami da bani abani. But the compassion of a son is on his son. We'll say, what this tells you is, the relationship between father and son is not a reciprocal relationship. It's a very profound Gemara. It's not a reciprocal relationship. A father would do anything for his son. A son would not necessarily do anything for his father. A son would do anything for his son. But a son wouldn't necessarily do anything for his father. So the Gemara says, Rav Acha bar Yaakov itbol bei Rav Yaakov bar Barte. The Gemara tells the story. Rav Acha bar Yaakov ultimately again raised his grandson, Rav Yaakov, who was the son of his daughter. Ki gadol, when he got older, Amar le Ashkin Maya, he said to his grandson, "Can you bring me some water?" Amar lo lav berich ana. So the grandson said, "I'm not your son." In other words, he said, "I don't have to bring you water. I'm not chayv and kibod aveim." He raised this boy. Yet I will say, again, I want to just point out, it's the nature of the word. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, this is in Ruchnius also. Our Father loves us more than anything and would do anything for us. And I will say, the truth is, the love is often not reciprocal. If we're honest, right? We have a Father who would give us and do anything for us, right? Literally move heaven and earth. And the truth is, there's only so far that often we're willing to go for Him. Right? So it's a profound life dynamic that finds its expression in a spiritual father as well as a physical father. V'hainu darmi inshi Ravi bar tach ana. So we'll say this is what people say. The expression goes, raise him, but yet he's still the son, but he's still your grandson. In other words, it sounds better in the Aramaic. But I will say, but Lamai says sometimes again you could raise a person like your child, but if they're not your child, ultimately again there's only so far that they're going to go. Incredible. All right, I will say let's go weiter. A lot more to do still. So Bepul Moshel Españos, right? Literally again during the siege of Vespasian. All right, during the siege of Vespasian, Gazra al-Taras Chasanim, they were gozer ultimately again that Chasanim cannot wear their crowns, like a wreath. So we'll say, this Mishnah is talking about various things which were instituted, Zecher leChurban, to remember the destruction of Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say, now, this is even before the destruction. This was the siege of Vespasian. Chasanim can't wear their crowns. Vala Irus, and about Irus. We will see what the ends of the Gemara. The Pomoshal Titus, when Titus ultimately again surrounded Yerushalayim, Gazru al Taros Kalos. They said Kalos cannot wear their tiaras. Again, v'shlo yilamed adam es beno Yavanis, person shouldn't teach his son Greek. Bepumos Aharon, with the final siege of Yerushalayim, which was also by Titus, ultimately again, before the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, Gazu shlo teitzi hakala ba'pirion, besoch ha'ir. They decreed that a kala should not go out in a canopy in the city. And the rabbis allowed it. Rabbi Meir died. Those who could go out and give parables died along with him. In other words, he was the last of the parable givers. Right? Ben Azai died. The diligent ones were finished. Ben Zoma died. The Darshanim died. Rabbi Akiva, Batal Kavod Torah. Rabbi Akiva died. Kavod Torah died with him. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Batlo Anshe Maisa, men of great deeds died. Mishveis Rabbi Yossi Katnasa, Pasku Chasidim. When Rabbi Yossi Katnasa died, the pious ones died. Velama Nikra Shma Katnasa. Why do they call him Katnasa? Shei Katnasa Chasidim. He was the smallest, so to speak, of the Chasidim. Umishveis Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai died. Batla Ziv HaChachma. The splendor of wisdom died along with her. Mishveis Rabbi Gamliel Azakin. Batla Kavod Torah. Kavod Torah died. Umeisa Tara also left. Uprishus Umishemes Rabbi Shmuel ben Pavi died. Batla Ziva Kahuna. The splendor of the Kahuna died as well. But not Rabbi Shmuel ben Pavi was a Kohen. He was not a Kohen, but rather again we're going to see he provided Perlach Nasas Archim for the Kohanim. So Mishemes Rebbe, when Rebbe died, Batal Anova V'Yirascheit, humility and fear of sin died as well. I just want to point out once again, not doing this justice. the fact that when each of these people died, certain attributes died with them was representative of who they were. In other words, if you do the character analysis and the biographical analysis of each of these people, it's understood why these particular traits died along with them. Gemara says as follows, Tana Banon. So I'll say, but I just want to point out there's two different girsos over here. One girsa has this as part of the Mishnah. One girsa has this as part of the Gemara. We'll just read it still as part of the Mishnah. So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair Omer, Shkar Beis Hamikdash, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Boshu Chaverim Nechorim V'Chafu Rosham. So also when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, ultimately again the Chaverim became embarrassed and Bnei Chorin, right? V'Chafu Rosham V'Nedadlu Anshe Maisu. Again, literally they covered their head. And also we're going to see what this represents with the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. There was a total power imbalance. And suddenly, again, the lowliest people took the reins of power, and Talmidei Chachamim were relegated to a low tier, low status. V'nidalglu anshe maisa, v'gavru ba'alei zra u ba'alei loshen. And I will say, who was catapulted to power? People with physical might, and people who slandered and spoke ill of others. Vein doresh, vein mevakesh, vein shoel. Ami laruli shaib. So I'll say, who do we have to rely upon in the aftermath of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash? Alavinu shabashamayim. We have no one else other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Elazar Gadol Omer, Shechar Beis Hamikdash, from the day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Sharu Chachima lemehavi kisefaria. The Chachamim became ultimately, and I will say, like teachers of children. The Sefaria teachers of children, ki chazana, became like the Gaboim. The chazana and the Gaboim ka'ama da'ara. As I will say, everyone was relegated to a lower status with the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. Va'ama da'ara, and ultimately Amaratzim, azla v'daldala. Ultimately, again, I will say, even became more ignorant. Vein shomei vakesh, no one's asking questions, no one's searching out HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ami larali shayim. I will say, who do we have to rely upon? Alavinu sheba shamayim. Ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I just want to point out over here, it's so interesting because this is so not the way you normally find Gemara. There's such a feeling of like desperation in this Mishnah. But I must say, understand, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, there was an existential danger to Klal Yisrael. You know, we're 2,000 years out, and we see, Baruch Hashem, we live in a golden age of Jewry. But understand, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, it was not clear that Klal Yisrael was going to survive this. It's that sense of unknown, and it's that sadness, and it's that sense of desperation that you hear echoed in this Mishnah. Let's go back to the Ikvos the Mashiach. I will say in the Messianic era, chutzpah yaska. Right? I will say there will be an overwhelming chutzpah. There will be an arrogance and a brazenness in greater society. The Yukar, so we'll say, so the Yukar, the Yukar Yamir. Hagefen tachas pirya, vayayim biyoker. Ultimately, again, everything will become very expensive, right? Inflation. Malchus tapech laminus. So monarchy will become agnostic. God will be removed from the public space. Ve'ein tochachos. And no one will rebuke. We'll say, it sounds like he's coming today, right? We'll say, so again, I'm just pointing out, we'll say, what you begin to see is, we'll say, all kidding aside, what he's describing is the current decline of society. The removal of God, the overwhelming chutzpah, inflation, right? We'll say, so again, in other words, society will come to a point of desperation, where there's going to be no way out but a Mashiach. Beis Vagel is nus. Ultimately, we'll say what was formerly a gathering of places for Chachamim will become a place of immorality. Va'galil yecharav, the Galil will be destroyed. Va'gavlan yashum, the Gavlan will be desolate. So Gavlan is Va'anshe agvul yisovu me'ili irvelo yicharenu. And we'll say the people of the border cities. Normally, again, the most secure place to live was a border city. Those people will be displaced. They'll go from city to city, and ultimately no one will take compassion upon them. V'chachmos, so from Tisrach, and ultimately, again, the wisdom of the sages ultimately will decay. V'yirei chet yimasu, those who fear sin will be despised. Va'emes tei ne'ederes, truth will wander. Naram pnei zakenim yabinu, the youth will mistreat the elderly. Zakenim yadu mibnei ketanim, the elderly will stand up out of deference for the young. Ben minavel av, a son will disgrace his father. Bas kama ba'ima, a daughter will rebel against her mother. Kala b'chamosa, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Oive ish anshe beso, a person's own family will become his enemies. Pnei hadar ke pnei akelev, the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. And that's not a compliment. So I just want to point out how you see Chazal feel about dogs. Okay, Haben Eino Mizbayesh Mi'ba'aviv, right? Ultimately, again, the son will no longer be embarrassed in front of his father. So I will say, it's scary, by the way. It's scary what the Mishnah is describing over here. No respect. Children won't respect their parents. Society, right? The youth will not respect the elderly. God is removed from the public sphere, right? Ultimately, again, chutzpah, arrogance, prevails in every area of life. Religiosity, spirituality is no longer something that is respected. So, and who do we have to rely upon? Who can we rely upon? I will say all you have to, and there's only one entity who could turn this around. And that's the Ribbon Shalom. We'll say when they said that by the siege of Vespasian, they decreed that the chassan can't go out like with his wreath. So what kind of wreath? Of salt and sulfur. So we'll say Rashi points out to her they used to use like rock salt that looked like a crystal. They would make these beautiful crowns. But ultimately, if he wants to wear a crown. Right, a crown of myrtle branches and of roses, that's on. Shmuel says, Asr. Even if it's made out of hadassim or roses, you still can't use it. If you want to make it out of reeds and sedges, that's mutter. Levi said, Levi said, no, any type of crown is Asr. So we'll say Levi was of the opinion that Allah with the siege of Vespasian, any type of crown became prohibited. They also decreed about Irus. My Irus, Tabla Dechad Puma. So Rabbi is very interesting. Tabla Dechad Puma means the Irus, Rabbi is an instrument. It was a bell with one clapper. Rabbi say this references back to the previous Mishnah. We spoke about the idea about the prohibition on music in the aftermath. Again, the Mishnah said the dissolution of the Sanhedrin, but it's also tied into the destruction of Beis HaMikdash. So there was a Rabbi Rafuna Avid Le Libre Tanbura. What's this incredible? So Rabbi Rafuna made for his son's chasana a tanbura. What's a tanbura? A tambourine. So Asa Avua Tavrei. So I say his father came along and broke it. So Amrle Michlaf Betalu Lechavui. You can't use it because ultimately, again, it can be confused with a bell with one clapper, which is Aser. Zil Avid Le Apuma Dechatzba Apuma Debir. What can you do? Make yourself a drum. So we'll say it's actually interesting that Chazal never legislated on drums. When they legislated, ultimately again against instruments, it was dafka that instruments, but drums was. We'll say that's why you'll find, by the way, some even to this day, Minag Yerushalayim, is that in certain circles, even at a chasana, ultimately again they only use a drum. They will not use other instruments. Again, we pass like the Shulchan Aruch that says that the prohibition on music was only what we'll call frivolous, non-mitzvah music. But mitzvah-related music is absolutely permitted. But again, good. So, in the siege of Titus, they said the kalos can't wear their crowns. What's the Ataras Kalos? So the Gemara says, Amar Rava Barachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Iyar Shel Zav. I will say this referred to a unique tiara that the Jewish woman would wear, which was a golden tiara that had like the skyline of Yerushalayim, not embedded, engraved on it. So again, by the siege of Vespasian, or by the siege of Titus, they, out of a sign of mourning, they said a person can't wear this anymore. We learn this. Ezu Ataras Kalos. We will say what is the crown of the kala? Ir Shel Zav. Aval osa kipa shamilas, but she can wear a head covering of fine wool. Tana afa chupas chasanim gazru. They also goes on chupas chasanim. My chupas chasanim zohoris hamizuheves. This was a canopy that was made ultimately again of red wool, so intertwined with golden thread. Taina mihachi eluin chupas chasanim. What's the chupas chasanim? Zohoris hamizuheves. Aval osa papiros v'tola ba'kamashir. So what can you make? So you can't, but you can make a chuppah made of lattice work and hang anything else you want in it. Good. V'shlo yilamed espino yivana. So we'll say you cannot. So one of the other decrees they made during the siege of Titus is you cannot go ahead and teach your son Greek. We'll say get ready for this. Tanarabana. This is wild. Kishetzaru machos beis chashmonai zelzeh hayo horkinos mibachutz va'as va'aristibulus mibifnim. So I will say, one of the sieges of Titus, right, was actually a result, the first siege of Titus, not the one that results in the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, was a result of a dispute between two Hashmonai brothers who were fighting over the throne. And they actually invited Titus. They invited the Greek general, one of the brothers, invited the Greek general to help him conquer Yerushalayim. So I will say, so again, the Gemara says, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, they're Jews, by the way. Those are Hashmonai brothers, right? They're Jews, they're Kohanim, with Greek names, which tells you ultimately, again, where they were holding in life. So ultimately, they're fighting over Yerushalayim. Hyrcanus is outside, Aristobulus has control of the city. Every day, so remember again, the Beis HaMikdash is still standing, but there's a siege. What do they need? They need sheep. They need animals for the Tamid Shal Shachar, Tamid Shal Ben Arbayim, morning Tamid, afternoon Tamid. So every day, what would they do? They would lower money in a basket, and the besieging army on the outside would put in 2 sheep into the basket, and they would bring it up. I'll say, when Jews go to war against each other, right, everyone has a vested interest in the continuity of the Beis HaMikdash, right? So again, I know we're at war, I know there's a siege, we'll send you down money, you'll send us up animals. This way, again, avoda goes on. Avoda goes on. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, when you fight with a Jew, this is how you have to fight. I mean, this isn't the ideal, right? But Lamaisa, again, even when we have disagreements have to be done in a way where ultimately we can still rally around certain core principles. So the Gemara goes right to what happened. There was a Jew, old Jew, inside of the city who knew about Greek wisdom, which means he knew Greek. So we'll say, so this Jew, who was apparently again a Greek sympathizer, or at least a sympathizer with Hyrcanus, who was the Hashmonai brother on the outside, told them, listen guys, you are never going to conquer the city as long as they are doing the Avod in the Beis HaMikdash. As long as they're offering the Tamid, you have no chance of ever breaching the city. So right, if you want to breach the city, you need to stop the Tamid. So the Machar Shulshulahem Dinar Bekupa. So we'll say the next day, the Jews in the city sent down money in the basket, and what happened? V'ha'elulahem Chazir. And I will say, they put a Chazir in the basket instead of a sheep. Let's say second line. Once the Chazir got to halfway up the wall, Na'at Tziparnav, it dug its nails, it hoofs into the wall, it wouldn't go up anymore. Nizdaz Eretz Yisrael Abamei Parsi. We'll say the entire Eretz Yisrael for 400 parsos shook. And we'll say the notion that a chazer, the Avi Avos Hatumo, was being hoisted up the walls of Yerushalayim as a carbon. It made the entire land shake to its core. Amru, Ar Adam Shigad Chazim. So we'll say at that point they said 2 things. Cursed is the person who raises pigs, who raises chazir in Eretz Yisrael. And I will say, cursed is the person who teaches his son Greek wisdom. Because remember, again, the way that the people on the outside got this message is someone on the inside communicated in Greek to the people on the outside. So the people on the inside who didn't know Greek had no idea what he was saying. So cursed is the person who teaches his son Greek. So we'll say that year, there was a general blight upon the crops, so they were only able to get barley from the Omer, from Ganos Street, which is far from Yerushalayim, and the Shtei Lechem from the valley of Ein Suchar. Normally, they were able to get barley for the Omer right outside of Yerushalayim, but that year they were unable to. Ini, so we'll say, is that true? You can't learn Greek from V'hamar Rabbi. Beretz Yisrael Lashon Sursi Lama El Ilashon HaKodesh Ilashon Yavanis. So we'll say in Eretz Yisrael, why is there a need to learn Sursi? Rather, we should either know Hebrew or Greek. From Rabbi Yosef, Bebavel Lashon Arami Lama. Why do I have to learn in Bavel Lashon Arami? Ela O Lashon HaKodesh O Lashon Parsi. Lashon Yisrael say. So again, you see from here that you're allowed to learn Greek. Lashon Yavanis L'chod, V'chachmas Yavanis L'chod. So I will say, there are 2 different things. There's Greek language and there's Greek wisdom. Chazal legislated on learning Greek wisdom. The language, if you want to learn the language. That was never the takana. The chachmas yivanas miyasir. I will say, is it usher to learn Greek wisdom? What does it mean when it says, Eni ola l'nafshi, mikol benos iri, elef yiladim hayu b'beis abba? Supposed to listen to this. He says, there were 500 students in the house of my father. Right, 500 students in the house of my father. Right, chamesh mi'os lamdu Torah, 1,000. Right, 500 learned Torah, the chamesh mi'os lamdu chachmas yivanis, and 500 learned Greek wisdom. And out of all of them, I'm the only one left. So Rabbi will say, Ela ani kan, I'm here, uben achi abba ba'asya, and my cousin, my father's brother's son is in Asya. So we'll say, what do you see from here? That again, in the house of Shmuel, apparently they were teaching Greek wisdom. Shiny Shabbos, Rabbi Gamliel's house is different. Why? The Krav and the Malchus Habu. Well, so Rabbi Gamliel was very close to the monarchy. It's right, the Greek monarchy. So because Rabbi Gamliel was close to the Greek monarchy, therefore what? He had to know Greek wisdom, and he had to train others to be able to relate to the Gentile government as well. The Sanya, Misaper Kumi, Harizem Idarche Emori. So say mispar kumi, which refers ultimately refers to a type of haircut, right? Rashi says this is the beluris. This is where they would go out and cut their hair in front and allow it to grow long in the back. So if someone does that, hareidime darche Amori. Both say this is the ways of the Amori, meaning this is following the path of the Gentile. Avtulos ben Reuven hitiru lo saprakumi. Avtulos ben Reuven, they permit him to get this type of haircut. Why? Shukar v'malchus. Because Rabbi says, since he had to travel ultimately again in Greek, in the upper circles of Greek, in the circles of the upper Greek echelon, they permitted him to get this type of haircut. Similarly, again, in the family of Rabbi Gamliel, they allowed them to learn Greek wisdom. Why? Because ultimately, again, they were close to the monarchy. Fine, we'll say, in the final siege, they decreed that a kala should not go out in her canopy. My time, what's the reason? So because of modesty. We'll say, here we go. Last Gemara Masechah Sotah. Mishemesh Rabbi Eliezer Niknaz Sefer Torah. When Rabbi Eliezer died, Rabbi said when he was buried, the Sefer Torah was buried as well. They referred to Rabbi Eliezer as a Sefer Torah because he possessed all of the knowledge. So when he died, it was as if the Torah itself was buried. Mishemesh Rabbi Yoshua Batla Eitzah. Rabbi Yeshua died. Eitzah, proper counsel, died with him. Umach Shava, and good thought. Mishemesh Rabbi Akiva Batla Zretra. So when Rabbi Akiva died, literally the hands which upheld and supported Torah. That Rabbi Akiva was someone who literally, again, was able to wrap his arms around the entirety of Torah. When he died, there was no one else with that breadth of knowledge. And ultimately, again, the well springs of wisdom were stopped up. When Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah died, Ataros Chachma. Literally, again, the crowns of wisdom ultimately, again, passed away as well. Shataris Chachamim Ashram. The crown of wisdom of the Chacham is their source of wealth. Mishemesh Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Batla and Shemesh Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa died. Ultimately, again, men of great deeds died as well. Mishemesh Abba Yossi ben Katnusa, Batlu Chasidim. When ultimately, again, Abba Yossi ben Katnusa died, Chasid, right? There were no longer any pious people. Abba Yossi ben Katnusa. Why did they call him Abba Yossi, the son of Katnusa? Shahaya Miktnani Chasidim. Because Rabbi say he was the smallest of the Chasidim. Mishemesh ben, that's not, of course, physical stature. That means, again, out of all the Chasidim, he was the smallest, right? He was the smallest, but yet when he died, the period of Chasidus ended. Mishemesh ben Azai Batla Shakdanim. When Ben Azai died, the diligent people died along with him. Mishemesh ben Zoma, or diligence, died with him. Mishemesh ben Zoma, when Ben Zoma died, Batla Dashan, the Shanim ceased. Darshanas died with him. Allah Govayim died. A plague of locusts came for Rabut Saros, and there were many difficulties. When Rebbe died, Hoch Palut Saros. There were even more Saros. Mishemesh Rebbe Batla Anavi Raschis. When Rebbe died, ultimately again Anava, humility and fear of sin, died with him. Amalei Rav Yosef Latana. Rav Yosef said to the Tana of the Mishnah, Lo tisni Anava. No. Don't say with Rebbe that when Rebbe died, humility died, because I'm still here and I am still humble. I am still humble. He's saying humility didn't die. There's Rabbi say, it sounds like a contradiction in statement, right? You're telling people that you're humble. So Rabbi say, so again, actually, Lublin Rav, once again, Rameir Shapiro of Lublin explains, what is he saying? What he's saying is, Rabbi say, there are two different levels of humility. Sometimes a person could know they know everything and still be humble. That's the highest level of humility. That's Rebbe. That's Rebbe humility. To know everything, to know you know everything, and still be humble. We'll say, what Rav Yosef is saying is, I'm also humble. There's still humility in the world, right? But l'maisa what? It's a different kind of humility. I don't know everything, and I know I don't know everything. So when Rebbe died, a certain level of humility. Those who know everything but still feel humble, that died. But the concept of humility still exists in the world with me. A different kind of humility. What's my humility? I know that I don't know everything. So humility still exists. The Adikana, only Rav Nachman said to Tana, Lo tisni yahrzeit, don't say that yahrzeit died with Rebbe. Why? Di'ika ana, for I am still here as well. They will say, I just want to point out, how do we take in a Gemara like this? Because the truth is, they will say, this is the most depressing end of a Masechta. Right? We're learning great person after great person who died, and their midos died along with them. I will say, here's the incredible part. I will say, these statements are more than 2,000 years old. More than 2,000 years old. And yet what? We are still here. So I will say, what you see over here is the incredible strength and resilience of Klal Yisrael. It's true. When these great men died, certain attributes and character traits died along with them. And when they died, there was a void that was left that is still a gaping hole to this very day. But the power of Klal Yisrael as a collective and as individuals is, even if we don't have everything we desire, we find a way to make it work. We are the people who find a way to build something magnificent with whatever building blocks are at our disposal, even if we don't have all of the ideal building blocks. With the loss of these great Rabbanim, the world lost special midos that we have yet to reclaim. Holes have yet to be filled. But yet, look at us. I will say, there is no better ending of a Masechta. Because what this teaches us, I will say, is that even when you don't have everything you want in life, it doesn't mean you can't build something great. This is true as a collective, as a nation, and it's true as individuals. I will say, what a journey. What a magnificent and absolutely overwhelming journey. And by the way, for the doubters, we finished. Right? With no recordings. You know who you are, right? And no homework. And I will say, we finished. Baruch Hashem, I will say, what an incredible schos to do our daf together each and every day as we finish this Masechta. And Meretz Hashem will details about the Siyum forthcoming. Tomorrow, I will say, we begin the incredible, beautiful journey of Masechtas Gin Abal. And I will say, Mazel Tov and Mizocha Meretz Hashem to do our part to fill the voids of Klal Yisrael together for many years to come. Shkat, I will say.